Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
And that's a good start. Now, tonight, it is Sodom and Gomorrah, the science of, and we'd like to look at the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and see if we can find any scientific evidence for the destruction of...
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
And the other thing, Matt, I think you've got the live feed running.
I've stopped it now, so it's fine.
So we're going to look and see if we can find any scientific evidence to support some of the various theories that are out there. And I'm really going to be relying on everybody else tonight because I've not had time to do that much research on it. So I'm going to be a bit of a sort of sitting in and listening to everybody because I don't think I'll have that much to contribute. I'll just be the referee. Matthew is dropping the YouTube link for those who want to watch. And also in the YouTube link, Matthew is going to drop the link to join as well. So Alex has prepared something which gives us a really good idea of the background to Sodom and Gomorrah from a biblical perspective. And I'm going to ask him, he's let me have a look at it, and I've asked him to read it out because I think it gives us enough of the background that we need, and it should help us on our way in this discussion. So off you go, Alex.
Okay, I'm just going to read it. Okay, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah evokes mostly negative emotions in the modern reader. Uncritical conservatives have used the story as an excuse to condemn homosexuality and, unfortunately, homosexuals. The truth is the story is not about any of that. All of these are just story elements used to contrast two people, Lot and Abraham. The story begins as a continuation of the previous story in chapter 18, and also to show the favor that that Abraham receives over Lot. In chapter 18, Abraham greets 3 men, and in chapter 19, Lot greets only 2. Of the 3 men Abraham greets, one is Yahweh. Lot doesn't receive the privilege of greeting Yahweh, he only gets the angels. The story deliberately anthropomorphizes God by presenting him as needing to send underlings to see if the reports of Sodom and Gomorrah's wickedness are true. It's a necessary story requirement in order to illustrate the differences between Abraham and Lot. The meeting with the divine in chapter 18 produces the promise of an heir for Abraham, whereas the meeting with the divine in chapter 19 produces a call for Lot to run for his life. Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 11, and Judges 19, 15 through 21 are striking in their similarity and suggest that one passage depended on the other. In Genesis 18, 20-21, Yahweh tells Abraham that he has heard the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah and is confirmed in 19:4 when the writer unequivocally states that every male, adult, and child came to Lot's door in order to sexually abuse the 2 house guests. The nature of the desire to commit this act is such that it can only be seen as a story melody because it's out of proportion with reality. Their crime is twofold. They desire to rape their victims, and it's a violation of hospitality. Ezekiel's rationale for the judgment on the city was that they were prideful, gluttonous, lazy, and uncaring for the poor and needy. Lot attempts to save the 2 house guests by offering his 2 daughters, and while this is horrifying to the modern reader, readers in the ancient Near East would have seen it as Lot trying desperately to do his duty. Lot fails, and the 2 men take matters into their own hands and blindly attack us. The angels then move to get Lot and his family out of Sodom before God rains his judgment on the city and the cities of the plain. His sons-in-law, however, refuse to go, and this sets up what will happen in verses 30 and 38. In a further contrasting of Lot with Abraham, whereas when God told Abraham to get up and leave the city, he did not hesitate to obey, the angels have to practically drag Lot and his family out of Sodom. Once they are outside, the angels command the still hesitant Lot to flee to the hills, but he persuades them to let him go to a small town, which came to be called Zoar. I guess I'm pronouncing that right, I really don't know. God then destroys Sodom and the cities of the plain with sulfurous fire. Lot's wife foolishly looks back and is turned into a pillar of salt, which contrasts her with the loyal Sarah and also serves to set up the last scene in the story. The southern end of the Dead Sea, even today, is a barren wasteland resembling a lunar landscape. It would be hard to imagine a better locale for a story in which God rains down fire from heaven. The setting would readily encourage the ancient reader to see it as a place where God acted in judgment. The story then shows Abraham going to the place where he had met the Lord and bargaining for the lives of any righteous that might be found in the doomed city, witnessing the aftermath of the destruction of the cities and the plain. Earlier in Genesis chapter 14, Lot was rescued by Abraham due to his relation to him. And in chapter 19, he is rescued again by his relation to Abraham, the just man and the friend of God. After finally obeying the command of the angels to leave the city, the now wifeless Lot and the two husbandless daughters take up residence in a cave. Having fled Zoar, and in the midst of the destruction all around them, the question becomes, how will Lot have heirs? The story, though intensely bizarre, illustrates the theme of new life after destruction. The story of the sex between Lot and his daughters in the cave is highly stylized. The daughters' names are older and the younger. The ease with which they are able to dupe their father, as well as the identical descriptions of the two encounters. The meaning of the end of the chapter serves two purposes. One is to ridicule the origins of Moab and Ammon, who later became enemies of Israel, which is typical of the ancient Near East. The other, though, is the main thrust of the story, the contrasting of Abraham and Lot. The just Abraham waits on the Lord, who in return for the righteous faith of Abraham gives him land and a son. Lot and his household are grasping and foolish, managing only to survive. Survive they do, not out of any effort on their own, but only in that God has chosen to honor the friendship he has with Abraham by saving his relation. The end. That's the biblical story. No idea how it relates to science.
Right, so if we're going to have a look at how it then relates to science, what are the things that we can look for to try and find any scientific or archaeological evidence of this event? So I think the first thing we can look for is any evidence in said area of the sulphurous balls, the great balls of fire. And secondly, it probably would be impossible to find a pillar of salt, but in a desert environment you never know. So we can have a look at those areas.
So are we going to actually discuss if these things are allowable by the laws of physics?
Mm-hmm. If we can. We need to look at the various theories that have been put forward to allow a literal interpretation of this, and then see if we can find evidence of said event, much like we did with the flood. And so I think we have to look at some of the evidence that is out there just from geography, and then evidence from archaeology, and also hunt down some of the theories. For example, Ron Wyatt apparently discovered Sodom and Gomorrah. So so that's the sort of things we're going to be looking for.
Right.
What would we expect to see if this story is to be taken as literally true? And do we see it anywhere? Okay.
Well, we see some evidence of where it might have come from, and I say that in the chat: bitumen, sulfur, and salt. There are a number of bitumen deposits in the area. It's the southern, southeastern portion of the Dead Sea. And bitumen is also tar, or asphalt. And some research, matter of fact, I kind of got a little lost in bitumen. You follow one trail down another. So tar, we have used tar or asphalt to, pave, also to waterproof. Well, it turns out bitumen goes back, asphalt, tar, whatever, goes back to the Neanderthals, where it has been used to waterproof various things. In that area of the Middle East, bitumen was used to mortar buildings, and for the roofs of houses. So, and it has been suggested that there are a number of places where they found where the roofs had been through. Well, when you roof yours with tar, it's flammable.
Yeah.
And so that is one possible line of reasoning. Now, the sulfur, I actually found sulfur balls, but it's not anything like they're looking at. According to the Geology Dictionary, It's a bubble of hot volcanic gas encased in a sulfurous mud skin that slid in contact with air. I even found a cool picture of what a real sulfur ball looks like, and if you hang on a minute, I'll do a screen share and show you, because they're found in coal deposits. So screen share over here. Here we go. Okay, screen share. Are we on screen share? Okay. This is what I'm looking for. That's it. Yeah, give me a stupid little. No.
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
You...
Where it's, oh, there. Can you see it there?
Yes.
That's a sulfur ball, and that's actually at an exhibit. It says Killer. Well, it's at ABC Gallery. It's talking about a mining exhibit, and it says. Sulfur balls be gone. Miners cursed these irregular pools of sulfur that sprouted in coal seams because they were hard enough to snap the cutting bits of machines. The miners then had to trudge over to place to drill. That's a real sulfur ball. But if you actually look, is this the one I'm looking for? Sulfur. I don't know if you can see that. Sulfur forms crystals. In its pure form. So you're not going to see what they're thinking of as sulfur balls. There's actually, I'm looking at a page, I don't know if you can see it, where it shows that it's orthorhombic.
Yeah.
And there are a number of here we go. I see this. These are pictures of elemental sulfur as it is found. Now this is elemental sulfur. It's possible that, because the pictures that I saw, the pictures that the site saw, because they're so yellow, it looks like it's elemental sulfur.
Yeah.
But elemental sulfur is found in balls. I was unable to find any reference whatsoever to naturally occurring sulfur in balls like that picture. So I'm not saying it doesn't occur like, I'm saying I was unable to find it. I'd like to point out that trying to look up things like asphalt and bitumen and other things like that, one of the problems I found is that most of the references are into commercial use or natural deposits. And what I found a great site was showed mineral deposits for Africa and the Middle East. Unfortunately, they were looking at the majority, where these commercially viable, and there's a lot of small deposits that. And I was able to find reference to a lot of sulfur deposits. This particular area has a lot of bitumen, a lot of sulfur, salt. And talking about salt, Sodom today, there's a Mount Sodom today, really unique because it is most remarkable. It is made almost entirely of halite, rock salt, and there's even on Mount Sodom here. It's called. There it is. If you can see, that's called. It's a formation. Lot's wife. Clearly, nobody thinks it's a Lot's wife. It's just a formation. Lot's wife. So you've got these elements talking about. I don't mean literally elements, sulfur, carbon, whatever. I'm talking about elements of the story that they are talking about. Story exist in that area. There's a one reference I found here. Oh, would you please go there? That is really, I put this in the chat, that is really nice, and I can get the map. There's that map. Here we go. This is the one I'm looking at. This is supposedly, see if I can make a bip here.
So, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Where it shows where brimstone deposits are. Where Sodom and Gomorrah possibly are. But there's several, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's Sodom up here, Gomorrah down here. Those seem to be the more popular approximate locations for Gomorrah, but there are people who think of it being more to the south, more to the west. It's just questionable. But there are brimstone, quote, sulfur deposits, there is bitumen, and there's a lot of salt. So the chemical elements are present in that. Let me stop screen share for a moment. I don't want to see that. Screen share.
While you have that going, is there any sign of whether it be dormant or former volcanoes or anything like that in the area?
Well, asphalt.
There
Yeah.
were.
Well, according to something I read recently, I don't think there's been any volcanic area activity in at least the last 4,000 years. In that region.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it goes way, way, way back, as far as I know.
There were no volcanic eruptions at or around the time that the story was supposed to have happened. However, that said, the area is a very, very what's the word? Tectonically active zone. Yeah,
Right.
because it's right at the top of, is it the Great Rift Valley, or the Great Rift Valley system?
Levant, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And Israel is slowly but surely moving into the Mediterranean. It's moving away from the rest of Asia, and of course that area is very technologically active. And the slime pits and the bitumen that's been talked about, and the evidence for the location of Sodom and Gomorrah is more down to the fact that bitumen regularly floats to the surface of the Dead Sea. So what they believe is that Sodom and Gomorrah, or at least Sodom being the larger of the cities, they were very, very, very important cities. That's why they were very, very rich. That's why they're talked about more than once in the Bible. Before Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot, and the story that we're all familiar with, there is actually another story earlier on where Abraham comes to the rescue of the kings valley of the various kings and rulers of Sodom and Gomorrah after the whole place is pillaged. And there's a huge big battle, and it talks about slime pits. And of course, slime pits in those days are what it's referring to are these bitumen pits, because at the time they didn't have cement, they didn't have concrete. So in the region, you can check this. It's the way that they built some of the Egyptian buildings and some of the Egyptian pyramids. They glued them together, the blocks together with bitumen, rather than cement, and which would make Sodom and Gomorrah a very, very, very important place, because this stuff literally just floated ashore, and they brought it on shore and they melted it down into a usable format, so it's not big hunking great lumps of black goo. And therefore, I would contend that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is actually based upon one of the world's first industrial accidents, where because what you have here is the melting bitumen in huge vats, right? In big terracotta urns, right? Because this is the Bronze Age. They don't have steel. They don't have iron. They're doing all of this with bronze, and so therefore they're not quarrying this stuff. They're literally getting huge lumps of this stuff, putting it into terracotta urns, and boiling it off. Yeah. Now, this is inherently dangerous in the fact that if your terracotta pot breaks, you've got this big jar of oil shale over the top of a fire. It's going to catch fire. And what is possible is that there was an earthquake. And if this earthquake was such that it happened in the middle of the day where they're all busy burning or busy melting their bitumen, you ended up with a firestorm. And of course, the place is full of storehouses where all this stuff is stored. It's also on the roofs. This stuff is going to go up like you wouldn't believe. So you end up with explosions. And what you've got coming back down is lumps of burning pitch, and of course in its raw form it's very sulfurous, right? There's a lot of sulfur in that area. It's very sulfurous, so what you have coming down looks like volcanic brimstone. You've got sulfur, burning sulfur that they're literally burning off. They're actually usually burning this stuff off when they're melting the pitch down. You've got this stuff falling down. You've got bits of masonry coming down. You've got bits of terracotta jar coming down. All of this lot is coming down, and it's all on fire. So if you want to, and bear in mind that pitch back then, that was stored in jars as well. So if that's going up, the whole place is exploding, right? And it will take out the entire area. It really will. So I would so therefore, when it references Abraham looking over towards the valley, the valleys of the cities of the valley, and seeing this great pall of smoke going up, yeah, that's what you would see if the entire area was just laid waste with an earthquake.
I would like to add to what Paul has said, because his mention of a firestorm is, I believe, absolutely bang on, and we can draw this analogy with Dresden. Dresden was one of the old cities of Germany, and it still had a lot of wood buildings, and they also had a lot of coal in the backyard, and it was all. And a lot of it was waterproofed with pitch. So one of the tactics of the RAF was to do a couple of explosive bombs and then have all the rest just incendiaries. So you'd get the fuel exposed, and then you could ignite the fuel with the incendiaries. And you may be aware of the great firestorms of Dresden. They had the big flame column going a couple of kilometers up in the sky. It was that strong. And you also had eyewitness views of trees being ripped up out of the ground and sucked in to the actual firestorm, because what a fire needs air, and the more intense fire it is, the more air it requires, and it does this at a faster rate. So that's why you get all these huge winds coming into the firestorm, bringing everything with it. So, as Paul suggested, it sounds very, very reasonable that this is one of the world's first industrial accidents. If the pitch was at a certain day and it just lumped in the fire, it would have gone boosh, and a lot of the fuel required would have been spread out, and you'd get the fire, and the fire would just spread out. And that's how the firestorm would actually would actually have been started. It's starting a big fire, and as Paul said, fuel was just abundant with in Sodom, as everything was made of pitch. Well, not everything was made of pitch, but everything was waterproofed with pitch. Pitch was used in everything from all this sort of stuff. So we would have had the long burning fuel source that a firestorm needs to actually get going and just continue.
Yeah. That's actually quite interesting to look at it as the fuel source for it, rather than fire being rained down. It's fire that's actually being generated there.
Well, I mean,
it does make sense.
You're getting clay urns that are exploding, and of course that lot's all going straight up.
Yeah.
And that's all coming back down again. So it's going to be raining fire on the entire area all around. It's all comes down to it just happened if the earthquake was at just the right time of year, when they're not in the fields, when they're not doing other things, where they've built up the stores, so they've got their storehouses all basically just jammed packed, and then all of a sudden this disaster hits and away it goes, and you've got the firestorm itself, and then you've got all the exploding jars and God knows what going up in the air, and then with all this being wood and with all the cinder that's also been pulled up in the updraft, that's also going to be dropping down on your fields. It's going to be dropping down on neighboring towns. And we also have to bear in mind that our concept of what a city is and a town is very, very different to what their concept is. Their concept of a city would be a large village. Their houses were the size of your shed. You know, they were tiny little houses, and you had a population that was probably hundreds. I mean, towns, everybody kind of knew everybody because the place was so damn small. So if you imagine cities on a plane all getting demolished, you're looking at maybe clumps of houses with hundreds of people in, not thousands. Our concept of what constitutes a large city is very different from what it is then.
So basically, you're saying that the cities back then were what we'd call perhaps a large village.
Yeah, they weren't very big at all. They're Bronze Age settlements. So you're looking at a town would basically be clustered around a well or an oasis. So from our point of view today, we'd look at that and think of that as a village. But because there was more than 100 people in it, maybe a few hundred people in it, it would be seen as a city. I mean, if you look at how big some of these ancient cities really were, if you look at how big Jerusalem was later on down the line, I mean, old Jerusalem, not Jerusalem as it is today, which is a sprawling metropolis, but old Jerusalem. Look at some of these old cities, you know, the ones where they had a wall around them, and you think, how the hell did they fit in there?
Yeah.
I mean, just within the UK, if you go and look at, say, for instance, the City of London, the City of London is within a square mile, yeah, and that would, if you think of it back in Roman times as Londinium, it probably wasn't much bigger than a mile across, and that is the capital city of the country. Yeah, what is really surprising when you go to some of these archaeological places is just how small the cities and settlements really were.
If they were that small, then possibly there wouldn't be a firestorm, because you need a lot of fuel, probably more than what you have in a village, as you're suggesting. So I think it would be a very big fire, but not a firestorm per se.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not what you would see as like what we would know as a firestorm. Say the incendiary bombings in Japan during the Second World War, the Dresden bombings and Coventry.
Yes.
Yeah, those kind of things we look at now, and it scares the living shit out of us. But if you even for the day, for a fire to completely wipe out an entire what would be at the time one of the largest and most prosperous cities in the region, you know, that is something else. I mean, bear in mind, I don't think within the Bible that Jerusalem had been founded at this time. So Sodom would have been one of the most would have been one of the most prestigious cities in the area. Also, as well, they talk about, and incidentally, archaeological discoveries that don't involve Ron Wyatt do actually back this up. That the area around the Dead Sea at one time was irrigated, and it was an area that was used for farming. Today, it's just a desert scrub.
Right. You know what their houses were built out of? I didn't look.
I'm not entirely sure what they were made out of.
I was curious because, yeah, I don't know as much wood because, yeah, I did discover that it was very different back then than it is now, or if it was stone. And there are some kinds of stone back under heat. So it could have been terrifying all around. And one of the things I put in the comment is anyone who knows anything about the Great San Francisco Fire in 1906, the earthquake, basically, it wasn't the earthquake, the Great San Francisco earthquake in 1906. It wasn't the earthquake that caused most of the damage. It was the fire afterwards, and they couldn't put them out because the water mains broke. Well, most of them broke in the air. And it's that there are pictures of it. The huge fire that just swept across San Francisco and burned up all the burned up all the wooden buildings, but even brought some of the masonry buildings because the heat was so intense. And I've been near. Actually drove through once a major forest because the California Highway Patrol accidentally let through when they weren't supposed to. I live in California, fire central. I've seen fires. Dust from major forest, ash from major forest fires come down on my head, and they're terrifying, and they move. A great fire can move fast and burn things down really fast. And if you have anything that's lightweight that will hear. One of the problems with the redwood trees, the redwood branches catch on fire, they break loose and then they float far away and sets them on fire. So, anything that's fly, and it's not even wind, does it? Fires create their own winds, Any great fire could be terrifying.
Yeah. As I said, it's called entrainment, and it's something I've looked at in depth. It's a question of the fire needs oxygen. And where does it get oxygen? It has to get it around from the environment. And the faster the combustion rate, the more oxygen, the higher the oxygen rate needs to be. And so that's how you get the winds coming into the fires. It's basic fluid dynamics.
Yeah.
I think even with the insufficient evidence we have for these towns, if they existed, something massive like an earthquake or a landslide could have destroyed them.
Yeah.
What is the is there any evidence for the terrain being flash created, like done in an instant? Because that's what the Bible story is portraying: God's judgment happening all at once. The sulfur balls, is it something that comes up? Is it something that forms quickly, or is it something that takes a relatively long amount of time for it to form?
The area, with it being tectonically active, it's a really geologically it's an absolutely amazing place. You have, the rock formations that you've got around there. I'm trying to think what the hell this stuff's made out of, but it does look it's like this mica material. It looks like ash. The whole thing does, and you've got you've got all these sulfur balls and salt. It's a very, very, very strange place. Is the Dead Sea region that this is taking place in, and you are going to get, to some extent, from a cultural point of view, you're going to get people trying to explain how alien it is compared with the top of the hill, and at the same time, there's a very real possibility that there was an actual archaeological incident. That there really was an incident in that area that had all the descriptions would match what they're actually saying, apart from the need for a god and angels and things like that. It really would look like hell on earth. You've got boiling pitch flying into the air and coming, exploding, and anybody underneath this stuff is just going to get coated with boiling pitch on fire.
Ouch. One of the things that I read in that little thing that I read at the beginning was it's the perfect story locale for this story. The location is perfect for the telling of the story. If you wanted to have, you couldn't pick a better place to assert that God rained judgment down on an area in this area. So that probably fed some of the belief that this was the spot where God judged Sodom.
That makes me. I had a look at some maps, and I looked in Google Maps. You can pull it up yourself, and if you look at the maps, it seems that now I mentioned Ron White earlier on, I think. Now he puts Sodom right down at the bottom. If you look at the Google map, it is just on the other side from Safi.
I think the archaeological stuff is actually to the north, not to the south. It's Ron Wyatt was apparently the story was he was driving past all this shit and he thought, oh, that looks like a burnt city.
Yeah, so he's got Sodom opposite Safi, to the west of Safi. He has Gomorrah further north, and it would be on the other side from Al-Mazrah. Okay. If you have a look at Google Maps, you'll see that. So it puts the two of them. He has put the two of them. You see that lower body of water. I don't know if it's, hold on. Screen share.
Is it Sodom's like on a peninsula, isn't it? That sort of juts out into the Dead Sea.
Yeah, that's one of it. Yes.
Well, that's the modern location.
Right, can you see my screen share?
Yes.
Right. You see Safi down here? He's got Sodom just across here, and Custer's rolling around now.
I think Sodom would be more on that map anyway. Would be close to Al Mazrah.
He's got Gomorrah up there. He's got Gomorrah about here, and Custer's going around in the circle now.
Sodom would be close to Al Mazrah. If you follow Route 65 down, you would get to Gomorrah, and then further south you would get to Zoar, which is where Lot and his daughters escaped to.
Yeah. So basically, Ron Wyatt's discovery, because this is something that comes up quite often in a lot of matters, biblical, the name Ron Wyatt will come up. So he's got Sodom and Gomorrah pretty separated, quite far apart, but the location of the sites were scattered over a distance of over 50 miles or more.
Okay, Ron White was wrong. I mean, that's not breaking any ground.
Yeah. So basically, if he is finding his evidence where Sodom and Gomorrah weren't, then we can disregard his findings completely.
Yeah, one reference I had that said that the southern theories are weak because there are no archaeological remains down there match anything like that, and yet the northern theory there are archaeological remains that could, and quite a few of them, by the way, like this set of remains and this set of remains is Gomorrah. There's a couple of, but yeah, it's more likely that as he said that it's a peninsula. Sodom was on a peninsula into the Dead Sea, and Gomorrah was on the southeastern shore of the sea, not south. There's a lot of brimstone deposits down to the south. See why that would be attractive. You know, it looks like area.
I don't know how to embed a picture, so I'm kind of lost here.
You can screen share. So
it doesn't help at all.
if you get the picture on a window, right? If you come to the Hangout page, and you'll see a wee list of icons down the left-hand side of the Hangout.
Screen share, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. You click on screen share, and then you click to the window where your picture is.
One of the things that is very important to consider when you're looking for the actual location and where it lines up with the archaeology is that although this thing is, although the place is effectively on the banks of the Dead Sea is one of the saltiest seas on Earth. So therefore, in order to get any settlement of any size, they're going to have some kind of agriculture, and that agriculture for where it is, that agriculture is going to have to be irrigated. So you're going to have a source of water other than the Dead Sea.
Yeah. Now, having looked at satellite images from Google Maps, you can see watercourses.
Yes.
You can see remnants of watercourses because it doesn't look like there's any water on them now.
Okay, I think I figured it out.
That's on the hills to the east of the southern tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are roughly the same locations that I found for Sodom and Gomorrah. There's a lot of evidence, of ruins in that area, of agriculture in that area that dates to the proper time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah, and you see coming out of the mountains, those valleys there.
Yeah, I'm just.
So that would be probably like river, caused by rivers and fresh water.
Al's just screen sharing something. Yeah, and that is definitely not where Ron Wyatt had them. No way. Yeah, he had them on the other side for a start.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, they're not as far apart.
They are quite a distance, but this is where I said that it'll be an industrial accident. Yeah. However, it's not going to be somebody being stupid and just setting fire to their little still, as it was, because I'm sure that kind of thing happened quite often. In order to destroy all of the cities, then you're going to need something like an earthquake, and that's going to be just at the wrong time. You know, the perfect earthquake for the situation, while they're all busy baking this stuff, and the whole lot goes up all in one go.
See, that makes sense to me. That does make sense to me. Because...
And the cities are close enough because Lot is supposed to have left in the morning, first thing in the morning, and got there before lunchtime. Where did he flee to? Did he flee to Zor?
Zoar.
Yeah. Now, if you look at that screen shared map, where Zor is, that one isn't on the banks of the of the Dead Sea. So therefore, it probably isn't doing quite. That's probably more of an agricultural town rather than one that's harvesting pitch, boiling pitch.
So I guess we can actually probably estimate how far
Not a big area.
Zor was from Sodom, because we can say a fast walking pace is, say, 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Let's say
That's a double pace. Normal walk is 2.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And you're also legging it over. Well, I wouldn't say. You're probably legging it over country road.
Yeah.
So let's say 3 miles an hour. And let's say started off at 7 o'clock. And arrived at, say, 1 o'clock. So that's 6 hours walking.
Yeah.
Apparently, Sodom and Zoar are about 17 miles apart.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
So I guess Gomorrah and Sodom were what, about 9 miles apart?
Mhm.
3 miles an hour. 17
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
For 6 hours at 3 miles an hour, that would have been
Six miles.
20, about 21 miles. Yeah, about 20 miles.
I keep forgetting I'm an American. Anybody need kilometers? Because I can't help that.
You also got to be bearing in mind that they're running for their lives.
Yeah.
No, well, listen, they're also not running on pavement.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty rough.
There's not road here. Well, like maybe there is. I don't know.
So I think perhaps 3 miles an hour is a pretty good guess.
Yeah, I think so.
For say 6 hours.
Yeah.
So you've got to be 3 times 6, which is
So
18.
So that map that Alex has got up fits in with that. Fits in with what would be physically possible.
Yeah, somehow you look at any map and it looks way bigger than it actually is, but that's really.
Yeah.
That's one of the strange things about the Holy Land. It's very small.
Yeah. See, Ron Wyatt has got Sodom way to the south.
Yeah, Ron Wyatt is comedic when it comes to his discoveries.
Yeah.
he is like
way to the north.
He is like the real Indiana Jones. He really is.
Don't insult Indiana Jones like that.
Well,
No, that is a bit much. That's a bit cruel to Indy.
He would be the real Indiana Jones if the character of Indiana Jones had absolutely bugger all qualifications and was entirely self-taught.
Indiana Jones taught at a university. Come on
See,
now.
the thing is, though, I mean, Ron Wyatt's name does come up with a lot of these supposed discoveries, and people are still putting stock in these stories of his.
He found the biblical ark. He found Sodom and Gomorrah. He found the Ark of the Covenant. He found the tomb of the resurrection, and he found the blood of Christ.
Yes.
Oh no, not him.
He found all the Holy of Holies from the temple or something like that, secreted in a tomb in Jerusalem that he could never seem to find again. That just happened to be immediately underneath Calvary, and therefore there's actually blood in the tomb that had run down from the cross. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake!
And he had it analysed.
Oh yeah, of course it turned out to be what it said it was.
And Jesus was haploid.
Yeah.
But with an Y chromosome added.
So I'm guessing Ron. The name rings a bell, but I'm not too sure who this Ron Wyatt character is.
But he's dead now.
Yeah.
But he claimed to have made all these discoveries. I mean, seriously.
And there's no existing evidence.
Oh, he also found the chariots on the floor of the Red Sea.
Yeah. He found it.
Bullshit.
He found the crossing point.
Is this one that Brian Bizzle says?
Yes.
That's a picture that shows up on Facebook a lot.
Yeah.
Chariot wheel at the bottom of the Red Sea.
Yeah. It's the same chap.
First of all, it was the Reed Sea.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a way up.
Which is a way off. Which yes.
At the top. That's
The chariot wheels in the wrong place. They're not chariot wheels. They haven't rusted.
He actually, I think Brian cites somebody else as a Muller. But when you look at the photographs that are provided by this person, they're actually Ron Wyatt's photographs.
Yeah. Anybody who cites
not new information.
Yeah. Anybody who cites Ron Wyatt with a straight face, you just laugh at them. Just laugh at them, because the Ron Wyatt was a caricature of even on those lists of amazing bullshit artists, Ron Wyatt is up there. He really is. The fact that he found nearly everything in the goddamn Bible apart from Jesus says it all.
Yes, but he had enough information to clone him. Because he got all the chromosomes, remember?
Oh, absolutely.
24 chromosomes.
I'm just surprised that he never found the Garden of Eden. But then again, you know, I guess he died. So I mean, some things slow the man down.
Other people.
Al's going to have to run, so thanks for joining us, Al.
Don't worry, Al.
Because that was very interesting. Now, I wanted to ask 13 Heathens a question. It's about social and cultural mythologies.
The thing that really strikes me about that story is as you look through different cultures and different nations, they all have their empire building tales. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about the story of Lot, one thing that seems to be left out is the daughters after the fact. Now, granted, you have the wife turning to salt, and in ancient cultures, salt was considered to do things like chase away demons, and at the same point considered to be a purifying agent. But then you move on, you have the daughters in the cave, and the daughters both sleep with the father. But what's left out is after that, each of these daughters has a child. And you find this later in the text. One child gives birth to the Moabites, which on that map, if you look by that region here, you have the Moabites over here, and you have the Ammonites, the children of the other daughter, just a little ways above it, both of which border on that one area there. And with ancient cultures, what you'd have is you know, the stories of, well, these people came from this and these people came from this, and if you're going to basically be talking trash about another culture, you're going to, well, you know, they come from incest. Us folks in Texas say that about people in Arkansas all the time to kind of rag on them. But you see these kind of things throughout history. Another thing, just referencing Texas history. In Louisiana as well as Texas, there are two towns with almost identical names. And the lore of this is that two Indian brothers met and split ways. One went east, one went west, and these were founded. You can see this going back to how Lot ended up where he was to begin with. And these kind of themes go throughout culture, all throughout history. Now, there are also occasions when you have cultures that they find something interesting in an area, so they come up with a story that goes along with it. So there's a question as to whether this is something that may have happened before or after the text, or been an ancient tale that was adapted. There are all these different questions, but a lot of it, in terms of the whole thing with the daughters at least, certainly seems to match up with various tales of how empires were formed. These empire-building kind of things that, you know, this daughter, after becoming pregnant from her father, went this way and they founded this nation, and this one went this way and founded this nation, which is also a parallel to the whole thing with Lot and Abraham, was it? Abraham? Yeah, anyway. So, but this is a very common theme, and as for the destruction of the city, we have all kinds of different stories pertaining to varied destructions, and it's very well known that the Jews tended to exaggerate in the stories that they've told. And this, of course, can be found through archaeology, and as was indicated earlier, the size of the cities once many of these ancient sites are found, they're a lot smaller than the population in the text tends to imply. So a lot of this kind of rings a certain kind of social engineering. There wasn't one tribe of Israel. There were several. This is referenced in things like the 12 tribes, etc. And it can be kind of shown through the text that there was a lot of infighting, so to speak, and a lot of quarreling and disagreement within these different tribes. This can also be shown in that there are stories that parallel so much that you have to look at them and think, okay, these stories sync up so well that it's highly possible that this may have come from a more northern tribe and this from a more southern. And these are things that should be considered when looking through the text, that whether there be some truth to these tales or not, what is the narrative really about? What are they trying to convey? What might the storytellers of the day have been trying to express with these?
Mm-hmm.
And in reading it, my conclusion, before even looking into it further to figure out who the daughters of Lot were supposed to be, and looking at other cultures and their kind of empire-building tales and how they would speak of, let's just say, other tribes of the same ilk, it really does seem to match up with this notion that it was really just talking trash about your neighbors, calling them a bunch of inbred hicks.
Yeah. Now, somebody has posted in on the YouTube feed about an asteroid.
That's something I've heard a lot. Okay, there are a couple other theories out there. There was one that there was a volcano, which is why I asked Jade pertaining to that. And the other popular one is that an asteroid hit there, and this is how they explained it.
Well,
What it was,
actually,
Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by the debris of the asteroid as it flew over on a path that came from, I think, the Indian Ocean, up across Saudi Arabia, over the Dead Sea, part of the Mediterranean, over Greece, I think, and then on up into Australia, where it was supposedly impacted in Kofel, Austria. Now there was a humongous landslide there that was like covered, I think miles in area, and you can even see looks like a huge crater in the side of the mountain, monstrous thing. But if an asteroid had hit there, what they're saying the size of it would have been, there would have been a lot bigger hole than just a landslide.
Well, see,
and plus you would have this stuff raining down all across. Let's see, it was 1,000. All right, hang on, let me look at my figure here.
Yeah.
The distance from the Dead Sea to Austria is about 1,500 miles. So everything under that path, including some part of Saudi Arabia where it came across there, would have been rained down upon by all this debris and stuff. So you'd have more stories or something than just Sodom and Gomorrah and maybe a few other things.
Well, it's too on whether the asteroid broke up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this.
Broke up.
Yeah. What it's saying is that
So,
when it
Kofel impact.
Yeah, what it's saying is that there is a cuneiform tablet in the British Museum.
Right.
Okay. It's an astronomical work, drawings, constellations, and the text has got known constellation names. But on one half of it, there's an object that's been recorded still in space, and an accurate note of its trajectory relative to the stars was made, and that trajectory would take it to that place in Austria. And what do you think is it came in so shallow and it clipped the top of a mountain, and that would explode the asteroid, is why you wouldn't have an impact crater.
Right.
But
you would have debris.
There was a huge landslide there. So basically the top of the mountain was pulverized, and that's what came down.
In Austria?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Look up Kofel impact.
Yeah. But they had a look at it on the trajectory, and they're saying that from the explosion, the big cloud would bend over the Med, and it would actually go out of the atmosphere, but it would re-enter the atmosphere over the Levant, Sinai, and northern Egypt. The ground heating, though very short, would be enough to ignite any flammable material, including human hair and clothes. It is probable more people died under the plume than in the Alps.
Yeah, that's one of the sources I read. Let me post let me screen share a map here real quick, if I may. Let's see.
And I mean, the trajectory shown on that tablet puts it to this site in Austria with an error better than 1 degree.
Yeah. Okay, here, if you look down at the lower right, you'll see about where the Dead Sea is.
Yeah.
Now, flight time, it would be 6 hours, 25 minutes by plane. By asteroid, I don't know.
Well,
but you see up there at the top where the little orange-red thing is, Kofel, that's the path they say it would have taken. Now it would have went across a lot of Saudi Arabia coming from the ocean.
Yeah.
And plus, you can see going up through Turkey.
But what they're saying, though, is that...
So there would have been destruction all along that path.
No, because it's saying that it was the ejector from that exploding mushroom cloud actually left the atmosphere. And it was when it re-entered the atmosphere, that's when the destruction happened. And given the trajectory, it was going to come down over the Levant, Sinai, and what was the other one?
whoever
You,
she,
so you wouldn't have a complete path of destruction along that line.
and
This is if
I
he
know I can see.
blasted out the right out, and then when it re-enters the atmosphere, so you're talking about a U-shaped trajectory.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about as it, not it was breaking up as it was entering, going through the atmosphere. So there
No,
would be
they're saying that
pieces and chunks of rock and stuff.
no,
all,
they're saying that it
yes.
broke up on the first impact in the Alps.
Let's just look at this though. Somebody bring that map up that they had.
Yeah. Hang on a second.
Bring that map up, right? What your the map with the Kofil asteroids.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Can we get that fixed on screen so that everybody can see it?
Just click on
Yeah,
Harry
if
Holler.
Fiona clicks on it, it'll fix it.
Yeah, Fiona.
I've done that.
Right.
I've
Okay.
done that.
Yeah, it supposedly it entered from the lower, well, what do you call it, southeast, came across the ocean,
So let's
across Saudi Arabia, and you can see the rest of the path up to Kofel.
right. Let's say, for instance, that because you've got relative sizes there, so you can see the size of Israel, and you can also see the Dead Sea. Now, just you had a picture of Israel there just a moment before you put this one on.
Yeah.
Are you able to bring that one back up? That one gives us a.
Actually, if I may, for a quick moment here, sorry, let me get back on.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah.
This here is the Negev region of Israel that I have up here. And this particular region in red is the greater region. I'm trying to figure out exactly where the Negev desert is, but the closest we have to a geological feature that would that appears that it could have potentially been a crater is in this region.
A crater. That's actually putting an impact in that area rather than in the Alps.
Impact. It's not sure whether it might have been meteor impact or if it was just the nature of the geological features. There are 3 areas that have deep depressions that are similar geologically, but there's only one that is crater-like. But as whether it's a crater or not, I'm still trying to find out.
Right.
But I think with this impact in the Alps, what they're saying is everything is blasted into the atmosphere.
Now, okay then, look at that map. Look at that map, right? See where Kofel is, yeah? Right? Big an asteroid hit it with enough force to remove the top of a mountain and basically deposit it into the valley. Now, this is the important bit. The ejector came out and went up in a plume, right? And it landed, and it only landed within the circle next to the word Dead Sea.
No, I don't think that's what the suggestion is. I mean, what they're saying is that they have evidence from this tablet that there was something in the sky on the right trajectory for that impact in the Alps.
I don't doubt
at the right time.
Well, no, the times were different. I think there was like several thousand years difference from the time of the impact or the event to when Sodom and Gomorrah happened.
Well, of course,
I've been reading a lot about it, and I think there was a big discrepancy in time.
Well,
I'd have to find it, though.
Exactly when Sodom and Gomorrah were supposed to happen. That's the thing too. It's clearly an exaggerated story.
Yeah.
So how do you pinpoint the exact time? And as far as the asteroid, well, they don't necessarily break up all at once or in bits and pieces. It could have come up and happened to have a big chunk fall in the Sodom and Gomorrah area, and it caused all of the bitumen, to catch on fire, just like sort of
the tablet
like
was,
Paul said.
Yeah, the tablet was made in 700 BC, but it is a copy of a notebook of an astronomer as he recorded the events in the sky before dawn on the 29th of June, 3123 BC. by the Julian calendar.
I think
That's
that
quite accurate. How can they get that accurate, sort of thing?
That was the date that the guy. It's a copy from someone's notebook.
Now, the date of the landslide is normally dated to about 9,800 years ago. So that would have been a lot further back than Sodom and Gomorrah.
Let's have a look for that, the landslide.
Yeah, if you want, I'll just post some of my links, and you can check them out better.
Yeah, I'm just looking for this.
it was about 10,000 years ago. It'll be coming out of the Ice Age time, well, that way.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying that the dates are different.
Yeah.
Don't work too good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the positioning on the map for where the actual craters seem, the crater-like features rather seem to be, doesn't really match up either.
Yeah, and also a lot of the evidence it's more of it would have been more of a geological event that caused that, not a impact.
Yeah, but if there was
partial impact or something.
If there was some kind of partial impact or something, that would have also caused a geological activity in other regions in the area, though.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been recorded elsewhere as well.
Yeah, it would have. So I'm not really seeing that. A lot of the time, people will see varied. As I said, they'll see whether it be features or in the earth or occurrences will happen, and they just come up with ways to try to explain it. And this really strikes me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it goes to prior, and a lot of occasions, it's prior legends that are adapted as well.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about it's an Assyrian scribe that made the tablet, and the person who noted it at the time was a Sumerian astronomer.
The thing is, you've also got to bear in mind, when you're talking about cultural mythology, it is entirely possible that there have been meteorites that have been found in the desert, craters that have been found in the desert. Only was it the other year there was that one over Russia. It was that was a spectacular event. But the actual rock, it ended up punching a hole through the ice on a lake. It wouldn't have even made a crater. When it actually came down, most meteorites don't make craters. They're actually almost cold to the touch when you pick them up. But what you are seeing on fire is the air and the debris coming off them, not the actual rock itself. It's a common myth that meteorites are glowing bright red hot. They're not. So when it landed on it actually landed on a lake in Russia, and it was only the impact with some of it that actually forced it through, but the rest of it was all over the surface of the lake. And that was just a little boulder that was a certain size. There's nothing to say that at the time there was a similar event that was recorded on a cuneiform tablet just like this. Chances are it was coming from the same from the same direction as all these other things, as they often do. I mean, you've got the Leonids and the... Well, what's the other ones? The Leonid meteor shower, and there's another meteor shower twice a year. And roughly most of the meteorites that you see coming in are coming in on that kind of trajectory.
Yeah.
Well, and there's something else, though. Examples of asteroid. I mean, when you go from meteorite to asteroid, that's a huge difference. Like out in Nevada, there's this monstrous hole of an impact there.
Yeah.
And then there was supposedly the impact down. Oh shoot! Down on above South America, that destroyed the dinosaurs. I mean, this thing was over thousands and thousands of miles.
I see where you're going at, mate. I see where you're going at.
But yeah, I mean, it could have been something smaller. But I was just saying.
Because, I mean, if you look at culture and the way that man tries to rationalize what has happened, I mean, a great big. I mean, if you've got a great big.
Fine.
Sorry?
Or in some cases, completely redefined. For example, the fall of Canaan. When they talk about this great battle, it's been shown that Canaan fell from economic collapse.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to believe. I mean, nobody would like to think that a dirty, great big space rock just randomly landed on them. There's got to be a reason for it. And even today we do this. with people. When you will hear a lot of people, when they hear that something bad has happened to somebody, they'll come out with things like, well, must have done something to deserve it.
Well,
Pat Robertson.
yeah, it ain't just that. It ain't just that. Think about it. The city in the Vale was, the cities of the valley were probably the richest cities in the area.
Yeah.
And they had a really shitty rap for hospitality. That was one of the things that they're famous for being really, really shit-eating people. I mean, the story that is presented in the Bible of Sodom and Gomorrah is often presented with those homosexual overtones on there.
Yes.
But the stories that you go back into Judaism, you are talking about hospitality.
Yeah.
When the bit where he turns around and says in the previous chapter that he has heard their cries, reference later on where they talk about, I can't remember whose daughter it was, but somebody ended up getting dipped in own honey and hung off the walls of the city.
I think it was one of Lot's.
Yeah, I think it was. It could have been one of Lot's daughters, and hung off the wall and stung to death.
Oh, the account I read said she was eaten by bees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I mean.
Didn't Lot offer his daughters to rape? Like, townspeople?
Wasn't milk and honey a form of punishment back there, where you were covered in milk and honey and left out in the desert for the
Yeah.
Going back to the thing with the daughter.
Horrified.
Yeah. So these guys were proper grade A cunts. They really were awful people, according to the story. And they were also very rich people. And wouldn't you just love to see rich people just get their comeuppance for being complete arsters?
It's Schadenfreude.
Context that's missing here. There's important cultural context.
Yeah, Schadenfreude was a...
I need to sneak in while we're still referencing the whole thing with the daughters being offered up. That was ultimately about hospitality. When you have a guest in your house, you're responsible to them, you're supposed to protect them and all this other stuff at almost any cost. That's what that's about. It's not offering them up like, here, rape my daughter, like it's so often presented. It's a matter of this person's a guest in your house and you have to protect them and take care of them and all this other stuff. It's that responsibility pertaining to that.
Absolutely it is.
So, in a way, I suppose, we're saying that, well, maybe there's a grain of truth in here. You really have to take it, not just with a pinch, but with a whole pillar of salt. Sorry about that. I couldn't help it.
I know.
Can we talk about that too?
Yeah,
definitely.
Pillar of salt. Now, somebody showed a picture earlier on. Of the rock formation that is said to be Lot's wife.
Oh, real quick before we jump to that, was there any other ideas about where the fire and brimstone and all came from, maybe, that someone might have ran across?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I've not had a chance to do my homework on this week.
All right, in the corner, done that.
So, yeah, that's me on the naughty step, waiting for the spanking. So, that rock formation that we saw earlier on, now, it wasn't salt.
No, actually, it was salt. The entire thing is salt.
That whole thing is salt?
Yeah, Mount Sodom is made of salt.
Right, thank you.
However, the story is more based on metaphor. The metaphor of that Lot. Remember, Lot was a blood relative of Abraham, right? The chosen patriarch, the man chosen by God to found a nation, right? And Lot was his nephew. Okay. However, Lot's wife was not. She was she grew up and she was a resident of Sodom. She grew up there. She was raised there. And what it's about is her turning back to, instead of looking at the future, but turning and being punished for turning back towards Sodom.
Right.
And that's what that is about. And it's one of these things that has been used to explain these strange columns of salt. It's like, oh, look at that. It's almost as though a person was turned to salt.
Mm-hmm.
And the two just, it's like just a perfect narrative there. You've got these things that are all over the place that look like huge salt penises. They're people with funny hats, right? You've got all these things all over the damn place, right? And you have this narrative, and that's what it is. It's a narrative mechanism.
Yeah, there's quite a few pictures of those things.
Yeah, there are.
Well, it's like this one I just flashed up.
Yeah, the site I said that the guides are often in that region are often pointing nearest pillar of salt and saying that's Lot's wife.
Yeah.
I would really like to know the chemical equation, how you can convert like a human body into a pillar of salt. Like I would really like to know the energy shifting motion that actually causes that shit to happen.
What is it? Change carbon and water into sodium and chloride.
Actually, if I may, if you go back to some of the views of ancient Egypt regarding salt, in a lot of their rituals, salt was substituted for blood.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It just dawned on me.
I
was thinking about
sympathetic magic
etymology, and obviously Sodom has been used to come to our word sodomy.
Right.
But also sodium.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm a bit late to the party, so I assume we've gone over that in biblical times sodomy wasn't what it is now. It's any form of sex that isn't missionary position, let's say. I assume we've gone over that.
No, we've just been dealing with the sciencey stuff, really.
Yeah. Okay.
But that was it just occurred to me there. Sodom and sodium. And I'm trying to find...
If they're linked etymologically.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
interesting
by the way, Dee, that definition of sodomy was still the definition of meaning any sex other than P and V.
Yeah. But it didn't specifically mean what we specifically use it to mean now. That's what I'm saying.
Crap, my sister.
Like now we basically use it meaning anal sex, but before then,
right.
Like oral sex would also be sodomy back then. And
what I was going to. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, how it's used. I'm just saying how it's used.
What I was going to say is that's the way the statutes against sodomy were written here in the United States. It wasn't just gay sex; it was any, not P and V. And there are people trying to reinstate the sodomy laws, which I think is hysterical. Apparently, they don't even.
They probably don't even know what it is.
Yeah,
they don't understand. Watching and enjoying it.
There was one state that put it into place and then realized what they were actually outlawing and repealed it within an hour of it being put in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the man that outlaws blowjobs in the United States?
That's what they realized.
You would be a dick, ironically.
I mean, there was wasn't it the last round of elections? There was some guy called Cuccinelli, ironically.
Cuccinelli.
Yes. Cuccinelli, and he was running on the morality platform, and that was one of the things he was actually promising to do was to outlaw sodomy. And the irony is he lost. But only just, and it was how much of a shitbag does the guy who won have to be to only just beat the guy who wanted to ban blowjobs?
Oh my golly gosh!
Well, actually, you can only enforce it if it happens in public, you know.
Well, this is true. I mean, anal sex is illegal in the UK, but I don't think they enforce it unless they catch you or somebody complains about it.
Add in years ago, there was a vote to try and ban essentially gay sex, voting against buried gay rights, etc. And there are people that voted to try and push this through. They went through and listed all of the names on Comedy Central, and it was actually really funny, the irony of it, in that 90% of the names that they listed were some euphemism for either penis or vagina.
Wow.
Entirely coincidental, but funny.
And then wasn't it of Ohio? I think it was Ohio that in trying gay sex accidentally outlawed sex altogether.
Oh, I definitely remember something about that. Yeah.
That really hurt the population.
Yeah, I realized it just, and they just at the end, someone said, wait a minute, let's take the way this is written. And they just all sort of said, crap, well, we'll fix it tomorrow. So for one night, sex was illegal.
Okay,
Wow.
that might have been the story I was thinking of earlier. Okay.
Yeah.
But
I'm
yes,
never as good with the details as I'd like to be.
so much of
Devil's in the detail.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so scientifically, how would Lot's wife turn into a pillar of salt?
I don't know, but do you remember the years ago in the original Star Trek series, some aliens were turning people into chemical constituents, and when that happened, there was this little cube of stuff on the ground.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yes.
They were from Andromeda.
Yeah.
They're trying to get back.
Because when you take all the water out,
There's not much there.
Freeze dried.
and little cube, was all chemical constituents of human beings, iron, the carbon, the what have you. So you'd have to turn all that stuff into salt, and you still wouldn't get you'd get, well, maybe a salt shaker.
Yeah.
We're only 2% sodium. Just had to look it up.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry, 0.2%.
Does anyone remember
Well,
seeing Terminator 2, where and what's her name is having the nightmare about the nuclear explosions going off,
Mm-hmm.
and they show a thing in a playground, and the heat, whatever, turns everyone like dries up everyone. They're like
Oh yeah.
statues or something, and then the shockwave hits them, and they just shatter in the dust.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lot's wife. I don't know. A UFO exploded over Sodom and Gomorrah, and the radiation. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Sorry.
it seems to me that using Occam's razor, which we know isn't always perfect, it isn't a rule, it's just a guideline. But it sounds to me like, given the deposits and given what Paul was pointing out, which is that they probably were manufacturing for asphalt, tar, whatever, and that something happened, perhaps a natural phenomenon occurred that caused to shatter large bitumen vessels, and they caught on fire. The roofs of the houses caught on fire. There were great explosions. There were probably big of olive oil around there too, which is also going to blow. Possibly even alcohol, which and so so basically we just had a conflagration due to some natural disaster acting in the industry of the time, like Paul said.
Yeah, OSHA wasn't around then.
Yeah, whatever the natural disaster was, yeah, it could have been an earthquake. And even with you don't necessarily, depending on how big an earthquake is, I've lived through many earthquakes, and a 5.0 earthquake, and again, it also depends on the substrate, what's underneath you, how hard you feel the earthquake. The Loma Prieta earthquake, I was 5 miles away from sand. Don't want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're on rock, you don't feel it as hard. To give you an idea, my house went off its found. I was trapped in my room because the whole house shifted and I couldn't get out. Had to kick the door open.
Whoa!
In panic, it was quite. There were fissures in my backyard, sand fissures, and the funny part, the funny one, the gas line, and I saw this little geyser of gas coming. Like, holy crap! And I went to look, and it looked like it wasn't I couldn't turn it off, but I just happened to run out in the street looking for help. Guy wandering around with a sling over his side, and in it of wooden stakes, and in his hand is a rubber mallet. And my first thought, this guy with a bunch of sharpened wooden stakes, and I was, holy crap! You mean vampire when there are earthquakes?
Wow.
Well, it turns out he was part of the volunteer fire. What the wooden stakes were for, and they were hung ahead of time, is to hammer it with the rubber mallet, remember, in gas lines to stop the gas from leaking. So he was the guy I wanted. As it turned out, everything turned up so he was able to just turn it off. But, elderly parents lived 2 miles away. I jumped in my car, dogs, because the dogs would not leave me. They were panic-stricken. The cat disappeared for 3 days. The chickens acted like nothing had happened. I'm looking at the chickens going, you really are fucking dumb, aren't you?
Well, see, when the earthquake was happening, their bodies were going all over the place, but their heads were staying stationary, so they had no problem. You ever seen people do that with chickens?
Right. I hop in my car, go to my parents, who are 2 miles away. Don't bother to knock. I've got the key. I can run in the door. Are you all right? And they're sitting there. My mom looks at me and goes, would you have coffee? And I'm going, we just had an earthquake. And we know. Well, and they're going, all right. And I'm going, yeah, are you all right? Well, they
and 13. Matt, you're playing music loud.
Yeah.
What I'm going to say is the difference.
Excuse me. 13 says that he's heading out.
Oh.
Okay.
Chat. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you for the sort of social and cultural input that you've had. That's been great.
Yes. Thank you.
So you take care of yourself.
Thanks,
thank
later.
you very much.
Yeah. So anyway, to get to the main point, so 2 miles away, alluvial soil, sandy soil, in my backyard, the beach, because it was old creek bed. My parents were on a hill of rock. They did not impact anywhere nearly as much as, even though I was 2 miles away from them, and then off to the west, I was 5 miles away from the. So I'm 5 miles away from the epicenter. Crow flies, they're probably even less because you have to triangulate it. So they're like maybe 6 miles from the epicenter, and yet the effect where they lived was much, much less than where I am. So when you talk earthquake and maybe neighboring peoples and what knowing about it, it's not necessarily, they're not necessarily going to notice about it if something happens. Here in California, earthquake, and we literally do what they did in an LA story. We'll sit around, look at each other, go, what, 8.5, 4.7, and someone, I don't know, it depends on where the epicenter was. What do you think? Probably maybe about a 4.6. We really do that. We just sit there and go, oh yeah, we're doing that. You can always tell the non-natives because they're freaking out. Mm-hmm. But if you live in a technically active area of earthquakes all the time, you're just like, yeah, it's an earthquake.
Yeah, and I was just looking. Oh, sorry.
I want to go back to one of the things that Paul had said earlier on, and I've just been looking up the tectonic activity.
Right.
Of the area, and there is a lovely fault line.
That's what I'm looking at too. Yeah.
Running exactly
underneath.
It's a strike slip fault.
You know what?
And where?
Here we go.
And
it goes right up through the Dead Sea.
Yep.
On up through the Red Sea, right on up through. We can see it up there.
Yeah. And more importantly, think about this, right? You've got a fault that runs straight up there with earthquakes, so you're always getting tremors and things like that. It's absolutely predictable. It's one of those disasters that's really difficult to actually predict the specifics of, but it's like turning around and saying, okay, I can't turn around and say which city in the on the Gulf Coast is going to get hit with a hurricane this year, but I'll tell you now, at one point, one of them is, what is it? New Orleans is going to get flattened again by another hurricane. Is it Houston? It's going to get hit by a hurricane. You can turn around and say it's going to happen, right? So there will be people turning around and saying, just as they are today, that the end of the world is coming. There's a great disaster, and God's judgment will come. And then, hey, what happens? There's an earthquake.
And also don't forget, during our last earthquake, Prieta earthquake, the World Series going on in San Francisco. So you had, the World Series, all these people in the Candlestick, I think they were in Candlestick at the time, having the World Series. We'll have a series, and yet everybody was like, "Oh, what the fuck?" And everybody was okay in this big. Remember, because it was between the I don't know if it was in Candlestick or if it was in the Oakland Athletic, where they were holding that particular. But nevertheless, they're both fairly close together, and yet everybody was fine there. And if you go over to the marina, it's flattened because alluvial soil. If you look at the picture there, another picture we had of that area, you'll notice just to the east mountains, and where you have mountains are a little bit like icebergs. Most of the mountain is underground, and when you have an earthquake, the earthquake, it doesn't stop at the mountain. Sure as heck slows it down. So there are in San Jose, just over the mountains from me, it's away, who didn't feel the earthquake strongly as people in San Francisco, miles to the north, because the earthquake went straight from San Andreas Fault to San Francisco. There are these mountains between where the was and San Jose, the Santa Clara, Silicon Valley. So location really can make a difference. Yeah. Yeah. So really be a lot of a lot of people go earthquake. Oh well, and then but yet if the epicenter was near Gomorrah, it could have been disastrous there, especially if they had unreinforced masonry buildings, and the downtown Santa Cruz and downtown here looked like war zones because they had all unreinforced buildings, and yet most of the county, looked pretty much okay. I mean, there were lodged, foundations, and every chimney in the county seemed down, but
the game
location.
Was Candlestick Park. You're exactly right. Not in Oakland.
Okay, I thought it was
mid-October of '89.
Sure. But that's not that Marina district. I mean, San Francisco is a little tiny city. It's 6 square miles.
Right. I mean, when it happened, you're exactly right. Nobody at the game was hurt at all. They just started chanting, "Play ball, play ball, play ball." Wisely, they were wise to stop the game because, first of all, I got to check to make sure that building's okay, and second of all, it's just like you said, not that far from the stadium where people really got hurt, and there was lots of damage. Yeah. But you're exactly right. I mean, an earthquake, it's dependent on so many factors. A place that really got messed up, just a couple blocks away, everything's fine or relatively fine compared to that, and it has to do with so many factors: the ground underneath it, the epicenter. Very complicated. Very complicated.
And as I said, it moved up and down the San Andreas, which goes across the top of our mountain. You can actually go up to the mountain, not walk. It's a little. You can actually go up the top of the mountains on Summit Road, and you can even see that because one side of the road is higher than the other. But could be along the fault, it didn't go across to the Santa Clara Valley so much. It depends on a lot of factors and where you are.
I actually decided I was taken to Mount Diablo, and I jumped up and down on top of the San Andreas Fault.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
I felt that, Fiona, when you did that.
But the thing was, last time I was there, we got some tremors in Moraga. Yeah. But they were in Moraga.
You know where that is? Yeah, just up.
Yeah, and that's where I have friends that live. And it was it the Hayward Fault that had actually gone? It wasn't the San Andreas. And it seems that the San Andreas is going dormant because of all the new faults that are appearing further inland. And they're the ones that are going.
It's just quieter.
Well, at
least the northern, we had a blowout here in Loma Prieta, and they had a big one in north. It's a little quieter.
Yeah. One of the theories that the USGS had put forward was that the stresses of the San Andreas are actually being transferred inland rather than going up through San Francisco.
Right. Yeah, and there are two very dangerous.
It's to do with the fracturing of the rocks in that area. The stresses have been transferred inland. And so basically the San Andreas is going to basically wanders up and then it's going to kink in around the other side of the bay.
I don't know why Californians are so against smoking. Their whole state's about to fall in the ocean. And
But it's interesting.
Who said we're all against it?
Well,
we felt with tremors in Moraga, and it was the Hayward fault, and my husband woke up and said, "Was that an earthquake?" Because all the blinds were clanging together, and I said, "Nah, it's a tremor. Go back to sleep."
Yeah.
And I was so annoyed with myself for doing that.
Yeah.
And then on the day we were leaving, I was outside the airport. I'm having a cigarette, and I felt the ground sort of woo. And I turned to this airport employee and I went, "What was that?" And he said, "Oh, it's one of the underground buses or something weird." I was like, "Oh, right, okay." And then he did it again, and he said to me, "No, it's a tremor." Well, I'm looking off for me. But the thing is, has anybody looked into, there are now some videos on YouTube. A few years back, there was only a single video on YouTube showing liquefaction as a result of earthquake activity. Now, I believe that there may be some more now.
Oh, it's where like the ground is so soft it like turns to mud or squishy and stuff sinks.
Yeah, I was going to say.
As it shakes, the water comes up. And I mean, that's why some of the areas in San Francisco had such a bad time, because it basically liquefied, the building sank. Now, what I'm wondering about round about the area in the Dead Sea, is that sort of thing a possibility in that area as well? On top of everything that's going wrong and great conflagrations and all the rest of it,
absolutely,
the destruction is going to be maximised, because if you look at the map, it looks as if there are almost like deltas at the end of some of these old water channels.
Yeah.
And that's the type of sediment that would liquefy. So you would not only would you have flames, people screaming, burning, smouldering, singeing, all the rest of it. You've got this exploding stuff coming back down, still on fire, and then on top of that, buildings sinking into the mud.
Absolutely, and think about it while you're all doing it. All that pitch also coming to the surface as you're...
Yeah.
So that's all going to catch fire as well.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of that. That is actually true, because liquefaction is just because of liquid. It doesn't have to be water.
No, you don't need water. It turns the ground so that it is like a liquid. It puts a solid into a liquid phase or something like that, and things just sink into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit, and then they fall over, because that's what's happened in our earthquake. Because when you've got a combination of cities that are on, which both Santa Cruz and Watsonville were, so the ground, all alluvial soil, and then you've got unreinforced masonry buildings. A major earthquake, you get liquefaction, the unreinforced doesn't hold together, and everything collapses.
Mm-hmm.
It literally looked like a war zone. It literally looked like somebody bombs out.
Yeah. So I mean,
and that's what happened in the Marina District too.
Yeah.
It's all filled. They filled in part of the bay to build those buildings, and that would be illegal to do.
Yeah. What you're looking at is you've got, rather than rock, if you have soil, sediment, etc., small particles, that's when you're going to get liquefaction.
Yeah, and bear in mind that the whole area, they're built on a floodplain. They're built on a plain because the whole area is irrigated for the agriculture to support the cities. I mean, you hear as part of the story the story about the Battle of Sodom, I think it is, where Lot actually lives outside the city itself. He doesn't live inside, lives outside, because he's a farmer with his sheep.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's later when he's married that he's moved inside.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm curious. I know I heard you guys talking about this earlier, and so my apologies. But was there ever a resolution as to how close together Sodom and Gomorrah were, the original cities?
I think we decided that they were within a half day's walk of each other.
Okay.
No, because I think it'd be another half day's walk to get to Zoar. And Sodom and Gomorrah were about that same distance apart. So it'll be a day's walk from the furthest away one to Zoar. Sorry, my eyes are itching up, Billy. But we'd actually looked at Ron Wyatt's discoveries. Well, I say discoveries. And he's put them on the opposite bank. And much further apart.
The
And only
interest.
because of what the landscape looked like. He didn't do any digs or anything like that in the area. He just looked at it and thought, oh, that could be it. That looks like a city wall. It's all white. So, I mean, I think we can bin that. But this idea of the world's first industrial accident actually it's quite an attractive idea as an explanation.
Yeah.
But then...
Yeah, I like that too. And by the way, that's a picture.
Sorry, you've disappeared. Oh, you keep disappearing.
She was saying that picture, I think, many regions liquefied in...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And the buildings just sink.
I always want to put an extra syllable in that. It's liquefaction. It's not liquefaction. I do that with a lot of words. It's the dyslexia. There are several end up. It's like trying to say Mississippi.
Yeah.
You end up. Yeah. That's a picture of the Marina District, and what liquefaction does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just for everybody.
It's one of the nicer pictures, by the way. There's somewhere actually pancaked.
So what were you going to say, Blue?
Guess how Jason Burns pronounced vivacious? He was going over big words, reading somebody else's, just like talking about Lord Nelson and how he left his wife for more vivacious women.
Vivacious women. Wow. Who was that, sorry?
J-Bo.
Burns.
Where can you go with that one? So,
isn't he the guy that challenges people to scholarly academic debates or something?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Scholarly academic debate, Jason.
Oh, someone just muted him.
I just don't want to get into it at all.
No.
Leave
Jason out of it. Let's continue.
I want to talk more about Jesus.
No. You know, that old blinking day, I've had enough.
So it could have been an industrial accident, for want of a better term, or it could have been a natural disaster, and given the lay of the land there, it could have had quite a serious effect because it wouldn't have been overly solid ground.
And also
next, the Dead Sea, sorry, the Red Sea. Good for Eden.
And also remember that the story is told by the survivors. What?
I think the cat's just run over the pots and pans or something. Oh dear, sorry, Blue.
Speaking of violence.
Are you miles away from your mic or something? You sound like... I don't know, sounds like his voice is coming from a distance.
Yeah.
Do you think should we mute Fiona while she's
cruising, Al. You are cruising. Get down.
Cruising for bruising.
Wow.
Too easy.
Speaking of sisters, cats do that.
See, that's what it could have been. It could have been somebody's cat that knocked a candle over, because, you know, we've had candles since the year dot, really. And the whole thing just went up in flames because it was next to some stored oil.
Yeah, we've got to bear in mind as well that the story was written down by the survivors, of which there were probably very few.
Mm. Yeah. And one of the survivors was seduced by his own daughters. Oh, sorry.
Wait, didn't the story go that Lot got drunk and then he had relations with his daughters?
Yeah, apparently they went off to a cave.
His daughters got him drunk, I think.
Yeah.
It's an uplifting story.
To carry on the tribe, because obviously, you know, there were no other people around at all.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Bottles of wine were abundant in the mountains, but people
I was just
were not.
thinking that, so that they're running for their lives, but they managed to stop to grab some wine.
Sounds like my kind of people.
They were wags, weren't they? It's like, oh no, stop, got to go, choose.
Well, apparently the wine store was still like available at the time.
Well, yeah, and I don't know who it was, but you know, thank God somebody brought the bottle opener.
Yeah. But I can't remember who it said. I think that is most likely to be one of those things that was used to explain, because there are stories of the whole Joseph story, Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. The whole of that story is devised to explain the 12 tribes of Egypt and how and to set up Exodus. It's not a far stretch to turn around and say, well, this part of the story, the bit where Sodom and Gomorrah get completely flattened, that there's a grain of truth in that. But the screwing up in the caves with his daughters was not, and that was just made there to explain how these two particularly shitty tribes are so shitty. Right, because the people, you know, the Moabites and the Ammites were descended from incest.
Okay, I wanna look, for the sake of the Christians that are probably foaming at the mouth here at this moment. I was just reading. I wanted to correct one thing here. Apparently, Lot, when he fled, actually he was told to go to the mountains, and then he didn't want to go. He said he wouldn't make it. He wanted to go to Zoar. And so the angel said they wouldn't overthrow Zoar on his behalf. So he went to Zoar first and dwelt, and then he left Zoar after and went with his two daughters to the mountains. So apparently they would have had time to take the wine with them.
So he could have gone to an off license on the way.
Exactly.
Got a pickup. Yeah.
A drive-through. Yeah.
Stopped at an offie.
Yeah. So it's one of these stories that is attempting to account for a bit of a disaster that befell these two places, that has been embellished and has been turned into a morality tale.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very much like Aesop's fables.
Yeah, except they're better. Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, it's in a way, it's to teach you. I mean, as a Christian, I would say it's to teach you the.
Well, I do have
I've lost my word.
It's to teach you how to be
Culture, tradition, history.
Yeah, to be hospitable to people. To be hospitable and friendly.
It's to do. It's teaching you a spiritual truth, but using what almost you could say is the equivalent of a parable.
Yeah, this is where we come back to the truth, that there can be truth in a story even if the story is completely fabricated.
Yes.
The actual morality within the story can be true.
Yeah.
I don't see any morality in this one. I don't see any morality in this one except it's just an anti-gay tale. What else is it?
Well, no, it wasn't back in the day. It wasn't specifically aimed at... it's about, from what I understand, which I admit isn't very much, it's about not being an arsehole to strangers who come through your city.
Well, here's a question I have now, and we need a biology specialist for this one, certainly. I'm just curious, because last week I drank a whole bottle of wine, and I went to bed that night, and I do remember some events from the night, not clearly, possibly, but well, nonetheless, I remember them. So here's what I don't understand. The daughter made Lot drink enough wine so that she could go and have sex with him in the middle of the night, and he didn't remember it happening the next morning. Now, my question here, and here's where this gets tricky. Here's where the line is. The line is, it would seem that once you give somebody enough wine to prevent them waking up and remembering, that would also be the same amount of wine required to not be able to produce an erection.
What's the line in Shakespeare? Give us the desire, but takes away the ability, or something, isn't it? In that Shakespeare.
Yeah, it would seem like there's a point of no return here, right? And not only did they do it once, they did it twice. So we're to believe that twice he drank sufficient wine so that his daughters could come in, have sex with him. He could perform, and yet didn't remember either of those instances. That seems to stretch credulity a little bit. I mean, I'd believe the resurrection before I believe that.
Carl, he was seduced. He was seduced by them and all that.
Right, but he says he doesn't remember. He didn't remember any of it in the morning when he woke up.
Begs the question.
Oh, man, I was so fucked up last night. I shouldn't have fucked my daughters.
Yeah, but I don't think.
Yeah, but it's no. It's like I say, it's the Shakespeare line of drink doth produce the desire, but taketh away the
ability.
The ability, yeah. I don't think
it was a little better worded, probably.
Yeah, it is better worded. It's not ability.
Yeah, that does seem
from
to be
King Lear, as I recall.
Anyway, so that was.
Be as droop. Brewer's Droop, sorry, not Pierce.
I was going to say maybe they had their version of nowadays. Some guys use like a little big metal ring or a leather strap that has little snaps on it.
I'm thinking, whatever, what is that? What is the what's the date rape drug? Roofies. Yeah, maybe they had whatever the natural version, whatever that plant that's derived from, if any, right? And this is they kind of did this. Now, what kind of? Now, I'm curious also because you read this whole story, right? And the whole point of this whole story is, God found Lot to be a righteous man, right? Family man, had a wife, had a traditional Christian family here, right? And yet somehow he didn't communicate to either daughter that this is kind of not a good thing to do, to go have sex with your father.
Well,
or did they do this because that's actually what he had been having with them all along, and so this was just a normal thing?
No. Remember
about his father, how they
they grew up, and they were descendants of their sodomite mother. So therefore, the righteousness was not passed on to the daughters.
No, but didn't Dad teach them anything, or is that what Mom actually taught them? I'm just wondering,
I'm sure he did, and he doesn't want to admit it.
I know when my daughter was young. I mean, if I just walked out of the bathroom from shaving in the morning with just my underwear on, and t-shirt, she would scream and go running. So I can't imagine,
That says more about your physique than you think.
Bite me.
Snap.
Oh, that was so mean.
No, she didn't.
It was a relatively decent physique back in the day. I admit it's gotten a lot since then.
As I said, that is more than likely tagged on there. You see, a lot of the stories that you get that are attributed to the patriarchs, a lot of those stories, well, they were kind of used as morality plays. Mm-hmm. Their life was very much like a soap opera, going from one tragedy to one adventure to the next. It's one drama after the next, and they're often set up as anti-heroes. This is what you shouldn't do, and here's why. He made the mistake, and he was a holy man, so he gets away with it. But, only because he's really holy and he knows Yahweh. But you're fucked if you try it, And that was how this stuff was often passed on and was often used.
Well, yeah, that's like the old thing about the dad that he's warning his son not to leave his room messy, and he goes to his son, he He says, just make sure, just don't leave your room messy. Otherwise, the same thing that happens to you same thing happened to your brother is going to happen to you. And the kid looks up at his dad. He goes, Dad, I don't have a brother. And his father said, exactly.
Yeah, but what I'm more interested in is how are these lineages and tribes actually established at a genetic level? Because it's really interesting once you talk about like the Moabites and the Ammonites in terms of once the sexual deed is done, like it's interesting how those genes actually replicate themselves after the whole incest thing.
I'd be more inclined to turn around and saying that the incest thing happens as a result of the tribe, and that we have a tribe and we have to somehow establish a lineage back to someone that's holy. You can't get back to Abraham, but maybe you can get back to Lot.
Well, usually don't they use the males in the lineage and not the women?
Yeah, absolutely.
It would have been the father's lineage, wouldn't it?
I mean, the daughters wouldn't have even been in there. He would have had to have had a son in order for it to be a legitimate lineage, wouldn't it?
No, but he had done sex with his daughters, so their daughters were his sons. I mean, sorry, their children would have been his.
Remember
he had sex with his daughters, therefore their children still would have been his children. So he still was the lineage that it carried on from.
Yeah.
I don't know what gender.
Yeah, wouldn't they be half siblings though?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, most of the family tree within Genesis is more like a bramble patch. It really is.
Yeah.
That's
That's a creepy fucking laugh.
Oh, that's Blue, ain't it?
Sounds like a deranged puppet or something.
No.
A lot of us have ancestors that really weren't our ancestors. People fooling around and yeah.
I mean, what is it? The relationship of Lot to Abraham is really fucking dodgy. It really is. There's some proper daughter poking going on there. It really is. I can't remember whether it's brother and sister or no. It's uncle and daughter. It was uncle and niece ends up with Lot, which is why they describe sometimes as Lot being Abraham's nephew and sometimes his son. It's really wow.
Oh, I just got what y'all meant about if the daughters bore sons, they would still be his son.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm slow. Thank you.
Well,
okay.
Not only that, historically there were a lot of adoptions. Even if you look to ancient, so and so was the son of so and so, except he was a nephew. He was adopted.
Yeah.
I think Julius. Did Julius adopt Augustus?
I think
related, but he wasn't his son. But see, that was fairly common going way back because you would often adopt an heir, or so you could have someone being your, your grandfather and your uncle at the same, and so there wasn't any, depending on who was telling the story and telling it, or which part was more important to the story, as to. Might have been adopted by your uncle. So this is my father, and he's my uncle. So depending on who's telling the story, is how they name that person.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's literally all over the place. At the point where the Battle of Siddim, the messenger comes over to turn around and tell him that his son had been captured, and I suppose when you think about it, Lot would have been his heir, because at that time Abraham had no heir. So Lot would have been his heir.
Been his son in that sense.
So it's important somebody,
regardless of the biological connection.
So it's important that he survived this disaster.
Yes.
Yeah.
For lineage.
Right.
Right. I think we've pretty much covered this.
There's one aspect we haven't covered.
Oh yeah.
And that is, this comes back to the, and this is more of just a point to note, that the angels. The angels were apparently there to cast judgment on the city. Yes? And you got to bear in mind that Lot met them at the gate and then escorted them to his house. And then the townspeople found out about these people and they wanted to speak to them. Now, wouldn't that imagine a modern day parallel just for one moment? That there is an Arabic bloke who meets two Arabs at JFK Airport, right? Who are there to cast judgment on New York by way of nuclear destruction. And the Arabic bloke drives those two guys that have come to nuke New York to his house for the evening. Wouldn't the police, the people of New York, the police, the FBI, whoever it is, be banging down the door to turn around and say, we want to speak to these people? And there is that aspect, right? Because it's often been portrayed as that the townspeople were there to bugger them. They said to know them. And incidentally, if you look within Genesis and within the KJV, the number of times that to know is actually meant as to have sex with is rather rare.
Yeah.
Right? It's rather rare. To know is not always to have sex with. Right? Because actually within that particular story, they talk about lie with and come into. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about sexual acts within that story.
And begot.
That's not true because, wait, hold on. That's not true because then Lot doesn't he come out and offer them both his handmaiden and his friend's handmaiden? Do not do that with these two, my guests, but take these women and do with whatever is right in your eyes.
Well, he could have been trying to distract them, but yeah, it just makes you wonder: did the townsfolk just want to know what these angels were doing there?
Yeah, it's something about them. It tells them stop acting so wickedly. Daughters for entertainment.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily say,
as your handmaidens.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily say that the were lining up to have sex with the two angels. Just that, like Paul said, maybe they want to engage them, and being a person who held to the concept of reality, which seemed to be a rare concept in that, said no, don't actually don't do that. Here, my daughters are here; they will entertain you. Something like that. Yeah.
Entertain.
Yeah. Look, squirrel.
Yeah, basically, yeah, distraction, isn't it? The way of distracting the townsfolk. That's an interesting take on it, Paul. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Very interesting. I think that we've just covered everything, so I'll wrap this up and we can go off here. But what we see is that I have plans for next Sunday, and I've got two possible plans. And I was thinking, I wanted to tackle young Earth creationism, but I want to tackle it in two different ways because I want to split it. And I want to split it into one episode on the age of the Earth.
Okay.
And then the following week, would cover special creation versus...
Fiona, would you add the age of the universe in there as well? The Earth and the universe? Or just the Earth itself?
It can be. And because I think if you're tackling young Earth creationism, you have to tackle the age of the Earth as well as creationism.
I agree.
And I think that's too much for one. So I would split that into two. So I thought next Sunday we will do the age of life, the universe, and almost everything.
Life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah. And thanks for all the fish.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's what I was thinking.
Apparently, the answer is 42.
And
Yeah,
God's
that
message to his creation was sorry for the inconvenience.
Oh dear. Anyway, back to the topic. Let's be honest.
Next week, I am going to attempt to get a tame geologist.
A what? Sorry.
A tame geologist.
What's
cool.
Tame
A
geologist.
tame one. We want a tame one.
Oh, a tame geologist.
tame,
I thought it was some new profession I'd never heard
No,
of.
we don't want a wild one. And we don't want a furious one. Just a mildly irritated one will do me fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've got somebody in mind for that actually. So that will shout out to Kevin Donahoe. If I can get a hold of him, that would be good.
Yeah,
because
I know him.
He's a petroleum geologist. He's worked in the industry for about 30 years.
Yeah.
And absolute dating of rock is his bread and butter. So he would be handy. Then the week after that, I think it's going to be the age-old special creation versus evolution.
Right.
So get your rocks ready for next week.
Pardon me?
And
Get your rocks off.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
get your biological hats on for the week after.
Yeah, I've got an idea about the stars as well for that too.
We do. We need to look at redshift.
Good morning, stars.
So there's going to be quite a lot. There's going to be an awful lot to cover there.
Everybody to be sha-la-la-la-lo.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Excuse me, people. Excuse me.
Early morning stealing song. Good morning.
Excuse me.
Now.
I'm trying to wrap this up now.
Okay.
All right.
Because it's now 11:30. We've been going for 2 hours. So we'll go off here now. I want to thank everybody for joining in. It's some of the avenues that have been discussed and new avenues to me, especially the industrial accident. And I think I'm going to have a really good think about that one. I do like that. And also the tectonic activity. Gut instinct, gut feeling is we're barking up the right tree here, but we'd never be able to prove it. I don't think anybody would be able to prove it. So, thank you for joining in. It's been really good. Thank you to those who have watched on YouTube and left some comments. And a special shout out to, where is he? He's run away. CTAH19, who put in the link to the asteroid impact in the Alps. That was actually very interesting. So thank you for that. So with that, I will say au revoir. Have a good week, and I will hopefully see you all next week. Good night.
Yay.
Yeah.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night, all.